Hello everyone, my name is Gandalin and welcome to another World of Warcraft guide. In this video, I'll be walking you through the gearing guide that I have created for Season 1 of The War Within. As always with my videos, make sure you check the description or the pinned comments for any updates that might get added after the fact. So, this chart that I've made basically summarizes all of the different sources of endgame gear and crests that you can get in Season 1 of The War Within. I know it's a lot to look at, so use it more as a reference. Don't try to memorize everything on the chart. Each section of the chart also has some extra notes that can help remind you of things. So let's start with the eye level chart on the left-hand side. So all gear in endgame is on one of these tracks, and each track covers a range of eye levels. So you can see some of them here: Explorer, Adventurer, Veteran, Champion, Hero, and Myth are the different tracks. Now on the chart I have color-coded them, so Explorer track is the gray, Adventurer track is green, Veteran track is blue, and so on. Now, any piece of gear that's on a particular track can be upgraded to the maximum eye level of the track that it's on. So Adventurer gear can be Adventurer 1 through 8 and goes from 571 to 593. All of these upgrades take a currency called Valor Stones, which you get from pretty much all of the content in the game. The higher level upgrades also require something called crests, and there are different types of crests for different upgrade levels. So in the second column on the chart, you can see the upgrade crest that is required to bring a piece of gear to that item level. It takes 15 crests for each upgrade step that requires them. Now you might notice that the gear tracks overlap with each other, and this is really helpful for keeping gear relevant for longer, especially if it's on one of the lower tracks. Now where gear overlaps, when something drops at that eye level, it will usually drop on the higher track. So for example, if a piece of gear drops at item level 600, it will be Champion 2, not Veteran 6. The only time that doesn't happen is the very rare drops from raid bosses. So those are the basics. Now all of the other tables on the chart show you what you can get from different kinds of content. So let's look first at the dungeon chart. In column 1 of this chart, we have the level of the dungeon, so Heroic, Mythic 0, and Mythic plus keys 2 and up. The second column shows you the eye level of the loot that you will get from completing those dungeons. And remember again that the colors here are indicating what track of gear you'll get. So for example, in a Mythic plus 5, you can get item level 603 gear that's on the Champion track. Something new in The War Within Season 1 is that Mythic Zeros are now on a daily lockout. In the past, they were on a weekly lockout, so that's definitely helpful for some early gearing. Column 3 in the chart shows you the item level of gear that you will get from the Great Vault by running a certain number of dungeons at that level. As a reminder for War Within Season 1, you need to complete 1, 4, or 8 dungeons at a particular level to get that item level out of the Great Vault. And then the last 2 columns show you the type and amount of crests that drop from each dungeon level. So Heroic drops 10 Weathered Crests, Mythic Zeros drop 10 Carved Crests, and then for Mythic Keys, if you time the key, you'll get 12 of the indicated crest. If you don't time it but you still finish it, you will get 5 of those different types of crests. One other note for dungeons, as you can see from the chart, normal isn't on here. Normal dungeons drop item level 554 gear that can't be upgraded, so I haven't included normal here. Next, let's move on to the raid chart. So for Season 1, our raid is Nerubar Palace. Very similar layout to the dungeon chart. The first column shows you the level of raid, so LFR, Normal, Heroic, and Mythic. And then for raids, bosses are grouped into buckets that tell you which item level they'll drop. So bosses 1 and 2 drop 584 on LFR, bosses 3 and 4 drop 587, and so on. You can also see the item level of very rare gear that is dropped by any of the bosses in the raid. The rare gear is all at the same item level no matter which boss it comes from, and you can see those item levels here in columns 2 and 3. And then again, the last 2 columns show you the type and quantity of crests that you get from the different groups of bosses. One thing it's important to note for this tier is that the last 2 bosses, 7 and 8, will drop both types of crests listed in the table. So in normal, you get both carved and runed crests for defeating bosses 7 and 8. When it comes to the raid row in the Great Vault, you just have to kill 2, 4, or 6 bosses on a particular difficulty to unlock those slots. And then just a note for the very rare gear, in this particular tier, it drops from boss 3, which is Sikran, boss 4, Rashanan, boss 6, Nexus Princess, and boss 8, Queen Ansarak. Alright, now let's move over to delves, which are a new feature in the War Within. So normal delves are always available to you, but they do cap out at that 554 non-upgradable gear just like normal. But each day there will be 4 delves, 1 in each of the War Within zones, that are considered bountiful. You can check your map, they have a glowy icon that you can see from the world map. Bountiful delves have better loot than normal delves, but you need a key in order to open the chest that gives you that loot. So these are called restored coffer keys, and they come from the first 4 weekly event chests that you do. So the chart here focuses on the loot that you get from Bountiful Delves, because it's actually endgame relevant loot. So in column 1 of the chart, we have the tier of the delve, 1 through 8. The second column shows you the loot that you will get from that bountiful chest. Again, remember the color coding. The third column shows you the eye level of gear that you get out of the Great Vault for running delves. You have to do 2, 4, and 8 delves at a particular level to get that eye level in that slot in the vault. Something to note about the Great Vault for delves is that you can fill out the row using both normal and bountiful delves. And then the next 2 columns here show you the type and number of crests you get for each tier of delves. Now delves also have a secondary system called the Delver's Bounty maps. So these are pretty rare, but they unlock a hidden chest at the end of a delve run that has even better gear than the bountiful delves. So these maps can drop from the blue chests that you find at the end of a bountiful delve that don't need a key to open. They can also drop from Zekvir when he invades your delve, which is totally random, so you can't really predict it. So maps have tiers just like the delves do, and when you use one, it unlocks a hidden trove at the end of your next delve of the map tier or higher. So if you have a tier 5 map, you need to do a tier 5 or higher delve to get that hidden chest. So this separate column here with the delves, again, the first column shows the tier of the delve map, and then the second column shows you the eye level of the loot that you will get from that hidden chest. And then the last 2 columns show you the crests and amounts from the hidden trove. The chest that you get from these maps doesn't need a key to open, so you don't have to worry about having extra keys for these Bountiful Delve maps. That said, like I mentioned, the maps are pretty rare, so you can't really rely on them for gearing. Think of them more as a nice little bonus that you can get every once in a while. Next, let's move over to the crafting chart. So crafting is a little bit different than the other gearing systems. The item levels of crafted gear don't quite match up with the item levels for the different tracks. Crafted gear can have 5 quality levels. It goes up in item level with higher quality, and you can always recraft a piece of gear to bump it up to a higher level. There are basically 4 tiers of crafted gear. So the first tier is Enchanted Weathered Gear, which is blue, rare crafted gear. So to make these, you'll need to have 30 weathered crests that you then use to buy a nascent weathered crest. And then you put in a crafting order with an enchanter, and they will make you the enchanted weathered crest. The second tier of crafted gear is gear that only requires a Spark of Omens, and you can use that on the epic purple crafted gear. For this tier of gear, you don't need any enchanted crests, you just need the spark. The next tier is enchanted runed gear, which is spark gear that you can upgrade to basically heroic raid level. To make this tier of gear, you'll need 45 rune crests, which then buy a nascent runed crest and then get enchanted into an enchanted rune crest. And then the last tier is enchanted gilded. This is again Spark of Omen gear that you can upgrade. To make an enchanted gilded crest, you need to spend 90 gilded crests to buy a nascent gilded crest. The last section of the guide here goes over the various discounts that you can get when using the whole upgrade system. So there's a couple different ones, and we'll start with Valor Stones, which is a warband-wide discount. So the game will track the highest item level that you've obtained in each gear slot across your whole account. So if you then get a piece of gear that's below that eye level in that slot, it costs 50% fewer Valor Stones to upgrade it. So this is really helpful for alts or getting a piece of gear that you want to use, but it's a lower eye level than what you've got. It helps make it not so expensive to bring those pieces of gear up to that max eye level. The second discount is for the crests. Now this first one is character specific. So if you get a piece of gear that's lower than what you've obtained in that slot, then you don't have to spend any crests to upgrade that new piece to the same level. So basically it means that you never have to worry about wasting crests. Once you spend it, you never have to spend it again to reach that same eye level. And then new in Season 1 of The War Within, there is also a warband-wide crest discount. Now this one works a little bit differently. So when you outgrow the use of a particular kind of crest on a single toon, then all of your other toons can get a discount for that type of crest. So these are tracked by feats of strength that you get in the game. So for example, if you have a character that reaches 593 in all slots, you will outgrow the use of weathered crests. So that means that all of your other toons on your account get a 5 crest discount when using weathered crests. So upgrades will only cost 10 for them instead of the usual 15. To get to the next level, then you would have to reach 606 in every slot, and then you outgrow carved crests. Reach 619 to outgrow rune crests, and 639 to outgrow gilded crests. So that's a walkthrough of my gearing guide for Season 1. Again, I know it's a lot to look at when you look at it all together, but remember, just use it as reference for the kind of content you're interested in doing and the kinds of upgrades that you are looking for. Hopefully this helped you understand the gearing system a little bit better and can help you find what you're looking for to accomplish your goals. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you give it a like and subscribe to my channel. Also remember to check the description of the video or the pinned comments for any updates that I might post about this topic. If you have any questions, leave a comment down below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.